The realization hit me like a slow, creeping fog, settling over me until I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was a late evening, the kind where the air feels heavy with unspoken things. We were sitting on the couch, the TV flickering with some show neither of us cared about. My partner, Lila, her name was, sat at the far end, her legs tucked under her, scrolling through her phone. I said something, I don't even remember what, something small, maybe about dinner or the weather. She didn't look up. Just gave a vague hum, her eyes fixed on the screen, her face blank. Not annoyed, not engaged, just indifferent. That's when I knew. Not with a dramatic crash, but with a quiet certainty that hollowed out my chest. She didn't love me anymore. There had been signs, of course, stretching back months, though I hadn't wanted to see them. Lila started staying late at work, blaming meetings that seemed to multiply without explanation. I'd text her, simple things like, "You okay?" or "Want me to grab anything for dinner?" and get nothing back for hours, sometimes not at all. When she was home, she was distracted, her mind somewhere else. I'd catch her staring out the window or fidgeting with her coffee mug, her answers to my questions clipped and vague. I told myself it was stress, that she was just busy, that things would settle. But the silence between us grew, and I felt like a ghost in my own home, moving through spaces where I used to feel wanted. I was lonely even when she was right there. Then came the night that broke everything open. Lila was in the shower, her phone left on the kitchen counter. It buzzed, and I glanced at it out of habit. The screen lit up with a notification. Not from her usual phone, but another one, a cheap burner I'd never seen before, tucked beside her purse. My stomach twisted. I don't know why I picked it up. Maybe some part of me already knew. There was no passcode. When I opened the messages, I found a string of texts from someone named C. They weren't explicit, not exactly, but they were intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. "Missed you last night," one said. "Can't wait to see you again," said another, with a heart emoji that felt like a knife. There were photos too, not of them together but of places. A cafe, a park bench, a sunset over a lake. Places she'd never mentioned to me. I stood there, staring at the screen, the sound of the shower in the background like white noise. I didn't feel anger, not then. Just grief, heavy and suffocating, like I was mourning something that wasn't even fully dead yet. I could have confronted her. I imagined it, waiting until she stepped out, hair dripping and holding up the phone demanding answers. But the thought of her lying, or worse, admitting it with that same indifference, stopped me. I didn't want to hear her excuses or see her try to justify it. I didn't want to fight for something that was already gone. So I made a choice. I put the phone back exactly where it was, went to our bedroom and packed a bag. Not much, just clothes, my laptop, a few books. I left my keys on the counter, walked out and didn't look back. I didn't leave a note. I wanted to disappear, to let her wonder, just as she'd left me wondering for months. The days that followed were a blur. I drove aimlessly at first, staying in cheap motels or sleeping in my car when I couldn't afford better. I barely ate, barely slept. My mind kept replaying everything. Every moment I'd ignored, every time I'd made excuses for her. I felt like I'd lost not just her but myself. Who was I without her? We'd been together for 3 years, shared a home, planned a future. I'd built so much of my identity around us that I didn't know where she ended and I began. I wandered through small towns, walked along empty highways, sat in diners staring at coffee I didn't drink. I was lost, untethered, like a boat cut loose in a storm. But slowly something shifted. Maybe it was the exhaustion or maybe it was just time, but I started to see things differently. I realized that what I'd called love had become something else. Dependency, habit, a fear of being alone. I'd clung to Lila not because she was my everything, but because I was terrified of being nothing without her. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. I didn't want to be that person anymore. I wanted to rebuild, to find out who I was when I wasn't trying to hold on to someone who didn't want to be held. I ended up in a small coastal town, drawn by the sound of the ocean and the promise of a fresh start. I found a job at a marina, cleaning boats and helping with repairs. It was hard work, physical, the kind that left me too tired to overthink. The people there were kind, not pushy. They didn't ask about my past and I didn't offer much. I rented a tiny apartment above a bait shop, just a bed, a table and a window that let in the salty air. I started to feel alive again bit by bit. I'd walk along the shore at dawn, watching the waves erase my footprints, and it felt like the world was giving me permission to let go. I made friends, a fisherman named Tom who told bad jokes, a bartender named Sarah who always saved me a seat. I wasn't whole yet, but I was getting there. Months passed and I thought I'd left Lila behind. Not just in distance but in my heart. Then one morning a letter arrived. It was from her. Forwarded from an old address I'd barely remembered giving out. My hand shook as I opened it. She wrote that she'd been trying to find me, that she'd messed up, that she wanted to talk. No apologies, not really, just a vague hope that we could meet. I sat with that letter for days, torn between anger and curiosity, between wanting closure and wanting to keep the peace I'd found. Part of me wanted to burn it, to never look back. But another part, the part that still remembered the good times, the way she'd laugh at my terrible cooking, needed to know what she'd say. I agreed to meet her, choosing a neutral place, a cafe in a city halfway between us. When I saw her, my breath caught. She looked the same but different, thinner, maybe her eyes tired. We sat across from each other, and for a while, neither of us knew what to say. The conversation was halting, full of pauses. She didn't deny the affair when I brought it up, didn't try to explain it away. She just said she'd been lost too in her own way, and that she hadn't known how to tell me. I wanted to hate her but I couldn't. I saw her not as the person who'd hurt me, but as someone flawed, human, carrying her own regrets. We didn't yell or cry. We just talked, and when it was over we hugged, a brief awkward thing, and went our separate ways. It wasn't reconciliation. It was goodbye, the kind I hadn't been able to give before. After that I felt lighter, like I'd set down a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. I went back to my life at the marina, to the waves and the salt air, and I chose to let go. Not just of her but of the anger, the questions, the what-ifs. Healing, I learned, wasn't about erasing the past. It was about deciding it didn't own me anymore. Then came Eliza. She worked at the local library, always carrying a stack of books and humming under her breath. We met when I went to check out a novel Tom had recommended, and she teased me about my taste in thrillers. There was no lightning bolt, no grand romance, just a quiet connection that grew over coffee dates and walks on the beach. With her I didn't feel the need to rush or prove anything. I was learning to be present, to let things unfold without forcing them into the shape of my old life. She wasn't a replacement for Lila. She was something new, something I hadn't expected to find. Looking back, I'm grateful not just for the good moments but for the pain too. It broke me open, forced me to face myself, to grow in ways I wouldn't have otherwise. I learned that love isn't about owning someone or losing yourself in them. It's about choosing to show up, flaws and all, and letting the other person do the same. I learned that loss doesn't have to define you. It can shape you if you let it. Now when I walk along the shore at dusk, the horizon stretching wide and endless, I feel peace. Not the kind that comes from having all the answers, but the kind that comes from knowing I'm okay without them. I've built a life here, one that's mine, not tied to anyone else's choices. I don't carry anger anymore, or regret. Just gratitude for the journey, for the lessons, for the chance to start again. And so I move forward, not running from the past, but walking toward whatever comes next, with my eyes open and my heart steady.